YouTubes. And hello, members. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening for our first ever general meeting on Zoom for the La Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club. I am Mitch Wagner. I am the board member for communications and social media. Welcome again. I am very happy to be here. After the last 2 months, I am happy to be anywhere, and I'm happy to welcome all of you as well. Let's talk a little bit about how this meeting will run. You've noticed that I've muted everybody, and I am the only one who is speaking or can speak, which would be a better world if that was always the case. But do not fear, we will let other people speak in turn, and I will actually not be speaking very much. Before we start, if you need some pointers on how to use Zoom, listen up, because here they come. We will have opportunities for Q&A. If you have a question, just raise your hand at any time, but do not raise your actual hand. Use the raise hand button on Zoom to do that from your PC or Mac. Look for the control labeled participants at the bottom of your screen on the PC or Mac. Click that, then click the button labeled raise hand. Very, very simple. If you're using the Zoom app from a phone or tablet, go to the participants button on the bottom of the screen and tap the raise hand button. And if you're dialing in, enter *9 to raise your hand. When it's your turn to ask a question, I will let you know. We can either do it where I unmute you and you ask yourself, or you can message me in the chat privately and I can ask the question on your behalf. We're gonna shut off the public chat momentarily just to keep people from getting distracted, and everybody can focus on the meeting. If there's something you need us to know about, send me a private message. You can do that at the drop down at the bottom of the chat window. Also, if you have friends or family who can't make it tonight on Zoom, they can watch us on our YouTube channel. Just search for La Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club on YouTube, or look for the links on our website, Facebook page, and Twitter account, or in your email update tomorrow. And I also think that YouTube will automatically give us machine-generated closed captioning. We'll find out about that after the meeting. The closed captioning there is actually pretty good, and when it's often fails, it often creates comical errors. So either way, we win. And yes, we do have a website. It's lamesafoothillsdemocraticclub.com. We have the Facebook page, which is also the name of the club, and on Twitter, we're LMFDems. And if you want to sign up for our email updates, go to the website and look for the Get Email Updates link at the top of the page. So let's get going momentarily. Our speakers tonight will start with Toni Atkins, State Senator representing San Diego and President Pro Tem of the Senate. We will also hear from La Mesa City Council member Colin Parent, La Mesa City Council member Akilah Weber, Elizabeth Lavertu, candidate for California State Assembly, District 71, and it's predictable that I pronounced her last name right and fumbled over the very common name Elizabeth. We've got Sara Jacobs, candidate for U.S. Congress in California's 53rd District, Raul Campillo, who's running for San Diego City Council in District 7. We've got Barbara Bree, candidate for San Diego Mayor, and last but definitely not least, Mari Elliott, San Diego City Attorney. We also may hear from my dog, who sometimes speaks up. Some of those speakers are candidates running for election against other Democrats. We invited the other candidates too, but they're not here. But first, we're going to hear from our club president, Tina Rynberg, and then we'll hear from board member Sharon Cox with some local business. So momentarily, I'm going to work some magic here and unmute Tina. And Tina, you're
Yes,
up.
I can't be muzzled. Hi, thank you everybody for being here. This is really wonderful to see each other, even if it's through a screen. I want to make sure that you all understand that if you have a problem, you go to Mitch. We will make sure that you get to be able to participate or at least see the meeting. A couple announcements. First, kind of a sad announcement. Gary Armacost is facing some health challenges right now. And so Linda is not here tonight. If you pray, if you send good vibes to the universe, whatever you choose to do, they could definitely use it. This is a tough time for them, and it's a tough time for everybody, and it's an even tougher time for them. So our hearts are with them, and keep them in your thoughts. Also, as we head into Mother's Day, we've had a board member and a friend of the club whose mothers passed away in the last month. Chris Pearson's mother and our VP for Political Action, and Mark Graysick of the Helix Water Board. And on this Mother's Day weekend, I think we should honor their wonderful mothers, because they must have been wonderful because they raised such wonderful sons that are such wonderful young men. So that's, and in the other kind of circle of life, since the COVID outbreak, my little grandson, Julian, was born. There he is. And of course, the pictures were taken by my daughter, so they're really like beautiful. So there are people being born, and there are people that are passing away. So that's such is life. Also, now, Colin Parent and Mark Grasick have asked for our endorsement, a friendly incumbent endorsement. Colin is the first Democrat that's been on the La Mesa City Council for like 35 years or something. And he led, of course, 2 years later to Akilah joining the board as well. Mark was the first Democrat elected to the Helix Water Board. I would like Mitch to unmute everybody very quickly, and I would like a motion to, or if there's a discussion to be had about endorsing both of them as friendly incumbents. The fact that we want to endorse them tonight and not others does not mean that others won't be included later. These are just the first two that I've asked. They've already been recommended for endorsed by the East County Caucus of the Democratic Party. So the county party will be voting, and I'm sure they'll be endorsed by the county at the next county meeting. So Mitch, can you unmute us and see if anybody has a question or would like to raise the motion?
So moved, Miriam Platkin.
Second.
Second?
Jeff
Do you have a
Bennett.
second?
Jeff,
Second is Hugh? Who?
Jeff,
Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody's unmuted. You can all speak. The motion is to endorse Colin Parent and Mark Grasick as friendly incumbents. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Are there any opposed? Say nay. Okay, thank you. That was very simple, and they are now officially endorsed by our club. And Mitch can make
Tina, hold on 1 second, please, Tina.
Okay. Is there?
All right, continue, Tina.
It was a unanimous vote, and they are endorsed officially, and we can all get back to being unmuted. Thank you for the vote.
Okay, so we thank you, Tina. Our next speaker is going to be Sharon Cox, who has some business of interest to the whole board. I'm going to mute Tina. No, I've already muted Tina, so Tina, you can say whatever you want now, and we won't hear you. And I'm going to unmute Sharon now. Sharon, we're ready to go.
Thank you, Mitch. And thank you, Tina. And yes, Mother's Day is a very special time, and I will definitely have all those people in my thoughts. Just as a local bit of update, I'm also on the board of the Stop Cottonwood Sand Mine organization. We've recently achieved both state and federal status as a nonprofit, so we're got all our ducks in a row. We're ready to go. Most recently, the developer Michael Schlesinger, and if you all want to muted, say boo when I say his name. He has filled out the environmental impact report responses to the county as his project to turn Cottonwood Golf Course into a sand mine, a 20-year sand mine, decimating that area. We don't expect to see his responses to this environmental impact report yet. There'll be several iterations, his responses, edits and such, but sometime early or late summer, we should be able to get our hands on that. And at that time, that is when the county comes to the public and says, what do you think about this? And that's when we want to say, no, 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 this is horrible. And these are the reasons why. The complication is that with COVID and people not being able to get together in groups, the county has sent us a letter saying they want to have it virtual, which means we would be doing something like this on Zoom. Can you imagine the disadvantage to us fighting this sand mine if we had to do it virtually. So what we are going to be asking the county to do is to say, hey, pause, don't go forward with this until we can all meet in person. That's the only fair thing to do to the public. We expect that that is going to be one of those difficult challenges, but what we will be asking you all to do when the time is appropriate, we are going to ask people to write letters to the County Board of Supervisors, both the ones in office currently and the ones that hopefully are in office in November. We also want to write it to the county and to the planning board that is handling this. We're kind of planning it very strategically time-wise. We are being advised by Peter Anderson of the Sierra Club. So he's really good at doing these logistic, attacks. And so at some point very soon, I'm going to be asking you all to get out your computers. We will have on our website sample letters, all of the addresses, emails, and stuff that these can go to, but we want to hit them in mass. We want to show them that this is a really horrible idea and you need to hear us in person. The idea that the potential for valley fever being unearthed doing this sand mine is a further complication for COVID. If people are contracting that and getting, even worse respiratory issues, that would make them more susceptible to COVID as well. And that's not something that's probably going to go away for a while. So if you haven't already, go to our website, stopcottonwoodsandmine.org. It's a very simple navigation tool, take you to what you can do to help. Sign up, put your information in there so we can communicate with you. We've got over 600 people that have given us their contact information and over 2,000 that visit the site regularly. But when it's time to do something, it's very time sensitive and we need you ready to go. So thank you very much. And I will be notifying you of updates every meeting we have, and just get ready to send some very strategic emails. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And we'll be looking out for that information. By the way, if there's anything you want to type company names or addresses in the group chat, feel free to do that. And also note to attendees, you might want to have a pencil and paper handy for any other organization names or web addresses that come up. So our next speaker is going to be Toni Atkins, the President Pro Tem of the Senate. And we're very proud of this local person made good here. I'm gonna unmute her momentarily and then we'll get going. Toni, and to all of our other speakers, I'm going to assume you guys have some prepared comments you want to make, but if you want to make this more conversational, I can prompt a little bit. Additionally, I'll probably kind of stop you after 6 minutes or so and then go to the group for questions. Reminder, just put your questions in the group chat, ideally private message to me, and we can take it from there. So I'm going to unmute Toni now, and I'm going to shut up myself.
Mitch, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you great.
Thank you. Let me start by thanking you for inviting me to join you tonight or giving me the opportunity. I will try to be very quick because there's stuff I would love to update you on. We have been out of session, the legislature, for about 7 weeks now. The Assembly returned on Monday of this week, the 4th. The Senate returns on the 11th. And we did have a special pandemic emergency response meeting today, talking about all of the issues, COVID-19 related, health related issues. If you, hopefully you had a chance to watch that. If not, we will be able to give you some updates from that. We had a special budget hearing a couple of weeks ago. Again, we return on the 11th. So we have pretty much lost about 7 weeks of what would typically be our legislative session and the start to hearing our bills. Of course, there's going to be a huge budget impact at the state, and that impacts everything, local government, schools in particular. We are going to get what would be the May revision on May 14th from Governor Newsom, because we have pushed all of the dates on income tax, that means we're not really going to have a May revision update. That's when we true up what resources and revenues we've gotten at the state. And then we start to see what additional dollars we might have, which would have been the case, except probably not now. We're going to be looking probably going into the week of the 18th. We will start our budget process, both the Assembly and the Senate, and on a much more refined schedule. We will be having one budget hearing per subcommittee on topics, and working really hard to do a workload or a baseline budget. Now, there probably will be another budget considered in July after we see the revenues. So July, August. So we're looking at doing two budgets probably this year. I will say California is in an incredible position going into this. If there is a silver lining, it's that we did not need to make budget cuts immediately based on the revenues and income because of our reserve, the rainy day fund. We had a $21 billion reserve down to $17.5 billion as we went into this pandemic, now at about $16 billion. So our hope is I talked to the governor today twice. Once he gave a preview call that you'll hear a lot about starting at the end of next week on what the budget projection looks like. And it's grim. It's going to be grim, but I would say the speaker was on the call, the budget chairs from the Senate and the Assembly. Our commitment is to try to maintain existing programs, to certainly focus on schools and the Proposition 98 commitment to schools. So it's going to be a bit of a task, but again, we go into this having spent a decade retooling our resources to get to that $21 billion reserve. We are looking at a condensed legislative session, a reduced bill load from both the Assembly and the Senate. We are putting everything through, I would say, a COVID-19 lens. And what that means is not just those bills, but housing, a critical issue before we went into March 16th in the pandemic, homelessness, wildfire protection and prevention, healthcare issues, COVID-19, of course. So we will be doing more legislation, not just limited to healthcare and COVID, but at the same time, I think because of the budget outlook and because of our condensed session, you're going to see probably a lot more thought given to the legislation that we do. So you should stay in contact with us. My staff we've all been working remotely. We've learned new ways to do business. If anything, I would tell you, I have never worked so hard in my life in a condensed time during the day. And I think all of you, I see Colin on the screen there. I think we can all relate to doing more work constantly on the phone. My staff is busy taking calls. Most of our calls, as you can imagine, have been on services and resources following the 4 stimulus packets from the federal government. We certainly hope for another one, particularly to be supportive of state and local government. We're going to need that. But I would say EDD, unemployment insurance, pandemic unemployment insurance, and certainly resources made available to those individuals who work in our community but are not documented and so have no access to the resources that everyone else is getting, whether you pay into as an employer for your employees' unemployment, or whether you are part of a contract worker, gig economy worker. We are trying to make sure that we are supporting all Californians. And I feel pretty good about where California is. We have pretty much led the way. But I will say we've got our work cut out for us, but I feel pretty positive about the leadership of our governor, the legislative leaders, in terms of trying to make sure that our focus is on supporting Californians who have been devastated by this pandemic. You will hear more tomorrow and Friday from the governor about moving to stage 2, working with as we open up our California economy and the roadmap, as the governor calls it, the resilience roadmap, and trying to phase this in a way that is practical, common sense approach, but to have people be able to get back out and our economy to work. The Senate has an economic working group. We will have a proposal next week as we return to the legislature. Earlier today, after we did the budget projection call or preview call with the governor, I was on the governor's task force on business and jobs recovery, 100 people on that group with a lot of subcommittees doing work on short-term, medium-term, long-term. I've gotten a lot of feedback from small businesses in particular. And the thing I like the most is the conversation about the fact that we went into this pandemic with needs to support Californians equitably. And as we come out of this, the disparities that long existed before the pandemic are even worse for some Californians. So the commitment to an equitable return to the economy is something that we're trying to look at. On the political side, I'm happy to answer any questions. I will just say by way of numbers, the governor seems to be very good at sharing some pretty basic numbers, but it's significant. Last week alone, we put out $2 billion in California for unemployment insurance and support for Californians. 4.2 million people have now signed up in California for some type of unemployment assistance. And we've now moved and shifted EDD. We now have 1,950 staff members working physically distanced in their workplaces, responding to calls from 8 until 8, 7 days a week. There have been glitches, but when we get the information and the difficulty, we've tried to respond. And I would just add, I hope if people have difficulty, if your friends, to the council members on the line, if your constituents, our constituents have problems getting through to EDD, please call any member of your state delegation. We are all able to help as best we can. Our staffs are on the phone every single day, working remotely to respond to citizens. My phone number, 619-645-3133. It's easy to find. COVID19.ca.gov at the state has an array of resources, including how you can get testing, free testing. You can also go through the County of San Diego, 211sandiego.org. We have plenty of resources to help try to answer your questions. I will end with very quickly 3 things I want to keep on our radar screen that I know you're all talking about. The census. We are still working hard to educate and promote people filling out the census. And that is a state-supported activity. It is not a non-state, it's state-supported. Chevelle Newell-Tate in my office is the point person in San Diego. Edson Perez in the Pro Tem's office. We are working very hard to make sure we continue, despite the pandemic, despite a federal administration that doesn't want us all to be counted. We are working hard to make sure the census is still something we respond to. Second, voting in November. And to our federal partners, I've talked to Karen Bass, who is a congresswoman out of LA, who's head of the Black Legislative Caucus. I've talked to Zoe Lofgren, who is the chair of the California Caucus. We want to make sure if there is another stimulus that there's resources at the federal level to support us in the states and county by county to make sure that as people, a working task force by the Secretary of State that is looking at how we can all vote by mail. Wonderful opportunity, but know that people do need to be able to have assistance in voting. We need to make sure we have enough places out of the registrar's office to be able to help folks who want to exercise their right to vote. So we want to make sure the resources are there. And we will be working at the state to push that and do everything we can. And the last thing, based on the census moving, we can keep you updated if you have questions on redistricting. And we have not yet gotten through the process at the state to form the redistricting commission at the state level. That happens in the next 2 months. But given that the census has moved, just, the commission will barely be selected and seated before they have to get to work. So we are talking to Speaker Pelosi at the to help us at the state level on some of those issues because it may impact how we vote. So more information to come on that. There's a whole Zoom hearing you could have or discussion and dialogue on redistricting. Please consider me a resource on that because we have an active interest at the state. I think I should end there with just a thank you for your support. I was, like many of the candidates you're talking to today, happy to come out of the primary. I was only one name on the ballot in November, but I will have a write-in candidate in November. It's a very low threshold to be a write-in voter, but I appreciate your support always. Happy to take any questions, but don't want to go over my time, which I think I already have. There's just so much to share. But feel free to call my office and we're happy to respond, and I'll take any questions that you allow in terms of time.
All right, I see two questions here. First of all, from Caitlin Tiffany wants to know, is there going to be any protection for renters statewide or locally? She's very concerned that many of her neighbors will become homeless if nothing more is done to protect renters.
It's absolutely being discussed right now. There is a piece of legislation by Phil Ting. We may have more information coming next week. Obviously, there's been moratoriums done at the state level for a short period of time. We know this is going to take longer than we anticipated, and people are not going to be able to keep up. So we are looking at options right now. Please pay more to come in the next couple of weeks, but we also have a piece of legislation looking at how to address renter protection, additional moratorium timeline. But in all honesty, we've got to figure out some resources to help. It isn't just a matter of extending a moratorium. At some point that comes due, and we have to make sure that we're looking at that as an issue. And we are definitely looking at it right now. So I'll keep you updated.
Great. We have another question from someone on the phone. I'm going to unmute that person now and we'll hear what that question is. All right, caller, you're on.
Thank you. It's Michelle Krug. Thank you, Senator, for coming. Quick question. One is, can you just speak to the May 12th special election? And can you also, do you have any further information about the FEMA program that's supposed to be helping people like me, shut-in, that have difficulty getting food, but can pay for it, have money in my budget for food, but don't have a way to have it delivered? Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. And May 12th is a special election, as many of you know. Elizabeth Romero in Senate District, that's a state Senate District 28. Right now, the Republican returns, it's a vote by mail only. We always knew we were going to have difficulty with a special election in that area, and with a vote by mail and obviously the pandemic, it has not helped in our efforts to try to support Elizabeth Romero. So we have had some virtual support for Elizabeth. There's another one coming up this weekend going into the election week. If you can help, please let Doug Case know. Doug, hi, I know you're on the phone, who helps and works with me on the political side. We are trying to do all we can. The CDP, the state party, has another effort underway over the weekend. So if you can participate, we would really appreciate it in this special. Not just the Senate race, but also Congressional District 25 with Christy Smith is also a work that the state party is doing, and we're trying to be supportive of. This is next week, and we know in the Senate, the state Senate, we're kind of up against it. So anything you can do to help Elizabeth Romero, she's an incredible candidate with a wonderful resume, and she should be in office. And if we didn't have this special, I believe we would be able to compete. And that's Joey in support of Elizabeth Romero. Michelle, on the FEMA program related to food, the Great Plates Delivered program was supposed to be up and running. I hear there have been some glitches with that. You can find some information on that on the covid19.ca.gov. But Michelle, I know you'll share this information widely. I'll see that we follow up with you directly and call you and see if we can figure out a resource that can be helpful in terms of the delivery aspect. I hear your point, and I know you made it the other day on another call. So I'm just going to ask one of my staff to give you a call directly, if that's okay. And feel free to share the information, and we'll try to get updated information about how the program is working, that the state put into to effect with Great Plates Delivered, because I hear there's been some concern about it. Thank you, Mitch, for all this time.
Okay, thank you, Senator Atkins. It doesn't look like we have any other questions. Your dog has won my heart.
Wonderful.
And I think we'll move on. Thank you very much once again. So
Thank you.
our next, I'm going to mute Senator Atkins now. And I'm going to unmute our next speaker, who is Colin Parent. Before I do that, a couple of additional points. First of all, I'm going to be a little more interrupty on time. Senator Atkins was excellent, and we appreciated every minute and second. But I'm just going to be rude and jump in on people a little more when they speak, just to keep things moving along, because we do have excellent, excellent speakers, and we want to be sure to get to everybody. Also, I've had a couple of instant messages from people who want to be added to the agenda or who want to be announced as candidates. We are grateful for your presence and your running for office, but I think we're going to have to pass on that because the plane is already in flight and it's too late to change course. So with that, I'm going to unmute Colin Parent and mute myself for a few moments.
Great. Thanks, Mitch. And I'll try to keep it within the time frame. I know I'm a slightly lower rank than Toni Atkins in the elected official world, so I'll try to behave. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone for your endorsement for my re-election. I haven't done a formal announcement yet. I've been waiting to get to a point where people might pay attention to these sorts of things, but maybe we'll just have to do it while we're in quarantine. And I just want to say also too, given the big economic shocks that this is all happening, I mean, it's definitely, we should all take a moment and thank the fact that we have in California have had leaders like Toni Atkins and also Governor Brown, who really helped build that reserve that we're relying on right now. And so I think that's just really a wonderful position to be in, and it's a tough time, but at least we're well prepared for it. So just to give folks a couple of updates about things that we've done in La Mesa. In the first few weeks of the shutdown, we sort of progressively closed down elements of our parks. We closed down our parking lots for our parks and also for the play equipment and also some of the athletic equipment. And that was really addressing some of the things that we were seeing right in the beginning. Since then, the parks have remained open. You are allowed to go and use the park, but you can only do it either by yourself or with only members of your households. And want to encourage everyone to keep practicing social distancing while in those places. That's what we're going to have to see in order to keep them maintained that way and open for people. And so far, it's been really good. I've actually done a tour myself of a lot of them and seen pretty good practices. Taking a tour around 10 miles of bike riding up and down the hills in La Mesa is definitely a good way to get your workout too. If you want to, we also have an eviction moratorium for both commercial properties or commercial renters and residential. You can find out all the details about all the things the city is doing at cityoflamesa.us/COVID-19. Just a sort of a running list. Every time we take an emergency action related to COVID, it's listed there. Just a couple things too. We're also, we're still doing business. We're still doing government. So we, at our last council meeting, we updated our priorities for the federal CDBG dollars, and we're actually going to be front loading some of our expenditures related to addressing homelessness. And so that's, I think, a good thing, and especially one that's particularly important now. And we also updated our ADU ordinance. So an ADU ordinance is basically the rules that allow people to build granny flats. We had adopted a very progressive, permissive rule last year, went above and beyond what the state was requiring us to do. And the state had made some additional changes, and we faithfully implementing those. The council is directing staff that we want to encourage new housing opportunities and new opportunities for homeowners to invest in their properties. And so we're continuing we adopted those policies just a week or so ago. And then finally, I'll just close with, we've also done some things to actually improve our services and to make sure that they're being better for residents who are going through this time right now. So we reopened our farmers market to be a drive-through market on Fridays. We have made it free for parking in our downtown village so that people can go and pick up from restaurants for takeout. And then finally, one of the things that I'm pretty proud of is that we reprogrammed our pedestrian signals so that they rotate, so they automatically go on in our highest volume corridors, so that people don't have to press a button and potentially contract the disease. And so this is something that all of my colleagues voted to support, and so I want to thank my colleague Dr. Weber, who's on the call with us, for supporting that. I think it's been made a lot of sense, seemed like pretty easy, and I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from many of the people that I've seen just walking around trying to get some exercise and some fresh air during this time. So want to thank again everyone for the support for the re-election. I couldn't have gotten elected in the first instance without your club, and I'm sure this club is going to be instrumental to getting across the finish line again in the fall. So I want to encourage everyone to be safe. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions about what we're doing in La Mesa or suggestions. And if Mitch, if I have a minute left, I'm happy to take any questions that you'd like to field.
Yeah, we do have time. I appreciate your patience. I'm not trying to be a jerk here. And your participation is, as far as I'm concerned, equally important to everybody else on the agenda. So that whole comment you made about not being as important, that you are as important. So we do have a couple of questions here. First of all, in your capacity working on mass transit, what's going to happen with getting people back on the buses and on the trolleys and getting them comfortable doing that? Can you address that point at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that question is premised. I didn't mention, but if people don't already know, I have the council in La Mesa it's a part-time job, and so I have a day job where I run a nonprofit called Circulate San Diego, where we do a lot of advocacy around public transit and affordable housing. We published a report actually a few weeks ago that used census data to show what share of essential workers rely on public transportation. And what we found is it's about a third of public essential workers rely on public transit, about 16,000 essential workers in the San Diego region. And so the transit is actually still running, and it is still providing this crucial service for people who are fulfilling these essential roles. And something the data doesn't show, but it's certainly true, is a lot of people are using transit to do other essential trips, like going to the grocery store, visiting the doctor, or picking up prescriptions. And so these things are, so transit is still very, very crucial, very important, but it is going to be a challenge for attracting ridership when this all clears up, right? And so I think the agency, one of the things that we did as an organization that I signed a letter for was to advocate that there was funding in the Federal Recovery Act, the Federal CARES Act. So $25 billion went to public transit, about $250 million of which came to the San Diego region. That's going to make sure that the transit agency isn't going to go bankrupt trying to keep its system running. And so it's going to be in a better position to start rebuilding ridership when the pandemic is over. But it's a big challenge. I mean, there's no two ways around it. There's a big perception challenge and just to begin with. So I think what the agency is going to have to do is some of the things that they are doing is making sure that it's as clean as possible, implementing disinfectant, making sure the drivers are safe, making sure that all the passengers and riders are wearing appropriate protective gear. And we're just going to have to monitor it really closely and to make sure that we're able to succeed.
Okay, great. So next question is from Carolyn Rainey, but it is one that is important to me as well. When are we going to be able to go clarify the status of the walking path on Lake Murray Reservoir? Apparently there's some confusion there. Before this whole hit, I was on that path like 340 days of the year. So right. Really kind of missing it myself. So what's the status on that?
No, it's a great question. I mean, first of all, I want to blame the city of San Diego because the park is in the city of San Diego, not the city of La Mesa. That being
You're monsters.
Yes, that's right. That's right. No, not actually monsters. So actually, a friend of mine actually asked about that just last week, and I actually texted the chief of staff of the city council member who represents that area in the city. And the chief of staff actually is a guy named Barrett Tetlow. He's a prominent Republican, but also a La Mesa resident and a member of our planning commission. And he explained to me that it is not open. They don't have immediate plans to open it. But I think what I would encourage people to do if you are interested in using that facility, email Scott Sherman's office, email the mayor's office, let people know that you're interested in using that facility, so that they know that that there's an appetite to do that. But I'll just be frank too, though. It's going to be a challenge. That some of the things that they've done for walking paths in other cities is they've done them one way, so that everyone walks in the same direction, so it's easier to socially distance. It's going to be really hard to do that in that park because it doesn't make a complete loop. Mm-hmm. So as much as we want some of these things to happen, and something that's valuable to communicate to decision makers that we want them to happen, there are sometimes some real practical limits. And so we may have to be in a forgiving mood if they're not able to reopen that.
And I think we'll just maybe ask one more question here, which is how can we support our favorite small businesses in town, particularly those that just aren't open?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think a lot of people want to support the small businesses. I certainly do. What I would encourage you, especially for the restaurants and the shops, just order things. You can buy gift certificates if they're selling them, but you can also buy things to enjoy in the moment. And I think but one thing I'll just suggest to folks is, if you're going to do some takeout, don't use one of these apps on your phone to order a takeout order, because that app is going to take a bunch, like a very high cut of the cost of that, or the price of that meal that you take out. Much better to just spend an extra minute, get on the phone. You guys remember phones, right? And get on the phone, put in your order, and then pick it up yourself. That is going to be a much more lucrative for the stores, and they'll be really grateful that you took that extra time.
Okay, yeah, I talked to Milo's Pizza, our favorite pizza place, which is not in La Mesa. Don't hate me. And they said it's a 30% charge from Grubhub. So I'm done with Grubhub now.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you very much, Colin, and for the work you're doing on behalf of the city. I'm going to mute you now, and then we're going to move on to our next speaker, who is Akilah Weber. So I'm going to do a little typing here, and I will. All right, oh, you're muted already. Okay, good. So I'm now going to press this button. This is all very interesting for all of you listening in, and we're going to unmute Akilah. All right, Dr. Weber, take it away. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. And first, I'd like to start by thanking Mitch and the Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club for inviting me to speak tonight on the state of our local communities. And I just want to start by thanking all the residents of La Mesa, San Diego County, everyone who's adhering to the guidelines. It's not easy. It is definitely a change to our norm, but it is something that we definitely need to do so that we can all get through this together. I want to thank all of my fellow first responders, all of the essential workers, including city staff, people that work at the grocery store, our restaurants, our other stores, because they are really putting themselves on the line so that we can still continue to have some sense of normalcy. So when I think about the state of our local communities, of course, I look at it from three different perspectives. The first, of course, from the medical perspective, since I am a physician. And I want to thank our governor. We in California, we are so lucky that our governor had the foresight, that he listened to the scientific community, and he quickly acted so that we in California were able to flatten the curve. I have lots of friends all over the country, and I ask them all the time, what are you guys doing in Georgia? What are you doing in Texas? What is going on over there? And we are very, very, very lucky here, because not only have we been able to flatten the curve, but we've allowed our hospitals and our medical system to really prepare for a surge if it comes. So we're monitoring the supplies, our ICU beds. I am a physician at UCSD and Radies. I get daily updates in terms of how many patients are admitted with COVID, how many ICU beds are in place. They are monitoring all of our supplies. I went on Monday to get fitted for a brand new type of N95 because they're monitoring our supplies and they're realizing that we're running out of the traditional ones that we needed. So all of us physicians had to go in and get fit tested for the new N95s that they're ordering. So, you know, because we are prepared and we've done our social distancing, we flatten the curve, and if a surge does come, then the hospitals will be prepared for it. Like many people, I do watch the numbers in our county. Our most recent numbers is that we've had 4,319 positive COVID cases, which is up. It's 159 new cases. Yesterday it was 140, the day before it was 93, the day before that it was 85. So we are still seeing an upward trend. We also know that there is a high number that is appearing in South Bay, because we do have people that live over the border but work here or have family here. And so we're seeing a tick in those numbers, partially because of that reason from South Bay. Those hospitals in that area are also getting slammed a little bit at this point, because those patients are going to those hospitals and they're being overwhelmed. And so they are now sending some of their patients to their northern county facilities. But like I said, you know, we are prepared if there is a surge. One of the things I do want people to recognize, though, is that when the county produces the numbers of how many residents in San Diego have COVID, that's only the people that live here in San Diego County. So hospitals may be treating people from across the border or from LA County or other counties, and you won't see those in the overall number that the county reports. We see them in our daily report outs in terms of the numbers and the ICU beds, but you won't see those. So that it is a little higher than what the county is reporting, what we have here, because they're only reporting on residents. However, regardless if there's a surge, like I said, we will be prepared. That is one thing that people are concerned about. The other thing that has changed for the good because of COVID is you now have the ability to do more telemedicine. So if you haven't seen your doctor, a lot of physicians, especially if they're associated or affiliated with a larger institution, UCSC, Sharp, they are doing telemedicine appointments. And so you don't necessarily have to go in to see your physician for a lot of things at this point. From a city perspective, you know, Colin Parent discussed some of the things that we've done in the city of La Mesa, which is great. Some of the things that we will still need to kind of keep an eye out, of course, are our small businesses, because they really are the backbone of our community. And so as a city, we need to continue, and we will continue to find ways to support them, and residents definitely support them, as well as we're loosening these restrictions and some of them are opening up. Make sure that you go in and give your business to some of your local small businesses. We also are focusing on the impact on our budget. It is having a huge impact. It will have a huge impact for many years to come. And so as from the city perspective, we are going to continue to aggressively seek funding and become more creative with the funds that we have. And one of the other concerns that we will need to address is what I call the digital divide. Senator Atkins talked about a discrepancy at this time. And we have moved into a time where access to good internet service is critical. So as a parent, you know, if you don't have good internet access right now, your kids don't have the ability to do their schooling online. If you don't have good internet access and you can't order your groceries from your grocery store and have it delivered to your house, you actually have to get out and go and get the groceries and expose yourself and potentially your family to COVID. You're not able to do telemedicine, so you have to actually go in. And I do have patients that still have to come in because they do not have access to internet services. So as a city, we will need to do all that we can to make sure that there's equity in the area, just like some of the other cities in our county is doing. And then my final thing is, if you're a parent, pat yourself on the back. If you're raising kids, pat yourself on the back, because you, like me, are now juggling jobs and teaching. So, you know, those things have had its challenges, but also some positive things. I've realized that, you know, my boys, I've always said they're smart, but now after I've been teaching them, I realize exactly how smart they are. I've also gotten an opportunity to see families spending more time with each other, out walking around, skateboarding, you know, parents on skateboards, kids on scooters. It's just been really amazing to see how families have been able to spend more time together. And then finally, you know, Mitch asked us to kind of end on what have we seen or heard that inspires you. And one of the things that I heard is that in order for us to get through this, we must think as we instead of me. And when I sit back and I look at neighbors helping neighbors in my community, if someone's going to Trader Joe's, they'll put a post on our Facebook page and say, hey, I'm going to Trader Joe's in an hour. Let me know if you need anything. Neighbors helping neighbors, cities reaching out to cities to say, hey, we're doing this. Can you help us with this? States helping each other. We send ICU beds to New York. Countries helping other countries. This has really shown us how interconnected we are. And if we want to get over this, then we have to work together and not think of just me. So thank you for inviting me, and I am open to any questions. I did see a question from Chris Pearson about vaccine. We are optimistically hopeful that we will have a vaccine in December or January. Any other questions, Mitch?
I'm wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit more about your experience as a doctor. What you're seeing, we read on the news about frontline workers just not having the resources, even getting pay cuts and furloughed, while big executives are getting $1 million bonuses. How is morale? Anything along those lines, what you've seen personally and individually?
You know, it is interesting because hospitals overall are taking a big hit. Things that you don't even think of. So when elective surgeries were put on hold, that really significantly cut a lot of funding that the hospitals normally get. And there are some physicians that mainly operate all the time, and they're not necessarily urgent procedures, they're considered elective procedures. A lot of what plastic surgery does is elective. A lot of what ear, nose, and throat does is elective. I was speaking with one of the chiefs of surgery at Radius, and he was asking me like how many surgeries I have on backlog. And I was telling him, and he was like, oh, because ENT has like ear, nose, and throat. They have like 700 cases on backlog that they've had to put on hold because most of their surgeries are elective, ear tubes, those kind of things. And so when you think about it in that sense, then the hospitals are taking a huge hit. And yes, with the hospitals are taking a huge hit, then they're looking down at the physicians and the other people saying, okay, well, can you not get paid as much, or, you know, take paid, you know, unpaid time off. So it's interesting, you know, and from an OB's perspective, I really feel for some of my patients, because in my adult clinic, you know, one of the most joyful things about being pregnant is that you and your partner can experience it. You know, I walk in and, you know, the patient and the father are there. We do not allow that anymore. So when a patient's pregnant and they come to see me, it is only the mother, because we are restricting who can come into the clinic visits. And so that's bad, because you can't see the ultrasound anymore. You can't hear the heartbeat anymore. So there have been a lot of different changes. I'm used to walking into a room and always shaking my patient's hand. I can't do that anymore. We're all masked up. So it's a different time, but it's definitely needed so that we can get through this.
Okay, great. I'm going to take a peek here and see if any more questions came in. It does not appear so I will say thank you, Dr. Weber, and I'm going to put you on mute, which is something I enjoy, putting people on mute way too much. And now we're going to go to Sara Jacobs. All right, Sara, you're on.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. It's so nice to see your faces, and thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to see you all again in real life soon, but I know things are difficult, and please know I'm thinking about you. And if there's anything I can do to help, please do reach out. I myself am frustrated all the time because I actually wrote Hillary Clinton's pandemic prevention plan. So I know intimately that it didn't have to be this way. And what life would be like if we had a different president. So I was so proud to win the primary by over 18,000 votes, getting 30% of the vote with 14 people on the ballot, and winning more than 300 precincts, including almost all of them in East County. So thank you for everyone on this call who was so helpful in that. I really, really appreciate you all. Obviously, a lot has changed since the primary, and we have basically turned our campaign into a service organization. We're doing wellness calls. We've put together a resource document specifically for resources available in the 53rd district, which I will put in the chat. Trying to do what we can to help connect people to the resources that are available for them and doing our part in the community. I also this week released a small business plan that I created after hearing from so many small business owners who just have not been able to get the assistance that they need from the federal government, and a lot of the implementation challenges that we're having with the Paycheck Protection Plan. And I'm going to continue updating that plan as I have more conversations with CA53 small businesses. So if you have any feedback or ideas, please do let me know. As you all probably know, Congress is now having discussions about what may be in a fourth bill. We'll see what ends up happening. The Senate is currently in session. The House is still figuring out how to reconvene safely and whether or not they can do remote votes and hearings. I have some thoughts on that issue, but hopefully we'll be able to get our Congress working again soon, at least logistically, if not in actuality. And we know that in the last bill, just getting basic funding for testing nationwide was considered a Democratic concession. So we'll see what ends up happening in these negotiations. But we know that Mitch McConnell seems happy to let states go bankrupt. So it makes it quite an interesting negotiation. I myself have been in close contact with members of the House and with House leadership. I worked in humanitarian response at UNICEF and on post-Ebola rebuilding at the State Department, and was Hillary Clinton's global public health advisor. So working to make sure that expertise is being brought in to the conversations. I know that one of the questions Mitch asked was what we're spending our days doing. So actually, in addition to campaigning, many of you know, I am the chair of a countywide initiative on childhood poverty called San Diego for Every Child. And as soon as we heard that the schools were closing, we immediately convened a series of coordination calls countywide on what were going to be the most urgent needs for students. And together with school districts and other nonprofit partners, we identified 3 key priority areas, which were food security, equitable distance learning, and childcare needs for essential workers. The school districts have done a great job at making sure that their food service programs are continuing. And so we saw the most urgent first need was that childcare concern. And so in mid-March, we created a COVID-19 Children's Fund. And so far, we've been able to mobilize over $6 million for childcare for essential workers here in San Diego County. And just yesterday, actually, the County Board of Supervisors approved $5 million for childcare for essential workers, contingent on the city of San Diego also approving $5 million. So we're hopeful that we'll have $10 million more coming our way soon to make sure that, nurses, grocery store workers, lab techs really don't have to worry about who's taking care of their kids while they're on the front lines. We're also using childcare centers as hubs to be able to get out distributions and cleaning supplies, since we know that many essential workers get out of work after many of the stores have already closed, and also many of the food banks and other distribution centers. The hub in East County is the Cameron YMCA in Santee, and I can include more information in the chat on that too. And based on the success of this approach on childcare, where we created an emergency childcare task force across the county, we're now co-chairing an equitable distance learning task force with the Classrooms of the Future Foundation out of the County Office of Education, where we're working with school districts, with community partners, with teachers groups, with students, to come up with a countywide plan on how we can address the issues of disparate internet connectivity, but then also digital literacy and other needs around distance learning. We're also advocating for 3 key priorities in the next congressional bill, which is expanding SNAP, or CalFresh as we call it here in California, and expanding the eligibility for it, making sure there's more direct cash payments for families, and upping what the dependent benefit is. Right now it's only $500. And then also advocating for $50 billion at the federal level for childcare, because we know that we won't be able to actually reopen our economy unless we have childcare that works and allows parents to go back to work, especially since it doesn't look like schools will be working in their traditional sense for a while. And we're making sure that families who make under the filing threshold for taxes know what they need to do to be able to get the economic impact payments from the federal government. So that's really what I've been up to. And I'm happy to answer any questions about what's going on in DC or internationally on the global public health realm, and what nonprofits are working on here locally. And I, again, as I said, will put some information in the chat for all of you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sarah. I do have another question from Chris Pearson. He wanted to know if any elements of Clinton's pandemic plan had been implemented.
No. So in 2014, during Ebola, after the Ebola epidemic, President Obama put in place a pandemic preparedness unit in the National Security Council, and increased some funding for global public health. What we were proposing on the Clinton campaign was keeping that in place, and then also expanding funding for global institutions and creating a rapid response fund so that we wouldn't have to rely on appropriations every time there was a pandemic threat, but actually you had steady year-to-year funding that could be counted on, that would enable us to plan and actively respond the way we have funding for natural disasters with the Stafford Act. So obviously, not only did they not implement any of our ideas from the Clinton campaign, but actually the Trump administration also got rid of all of the protections that the Obama administration had put in place based on their learnings from Ebola.
Okay, so question that I have, if you win this election, I think you're going to be coming into office and you're going to be looking at basically the second Great Depression, which, 25% unemployment, businesses going down. I've been intrigued by proposals for basically a New Deal, which would involve what, Medicare for all, guaranteed jobs for everybody, cash infusions to businesses that will make the trillions of dollars we've seen today look like sofa cushion change. Where do you stand on all that? How much should the federal government be doing here?
So I think we're going to need really aggressive action by the federal government. And because interest rates are at zero right now, we basically can deficit spend with no cost. And so we need to be doing that because we have already seen, based on our experience in 2008 and 2009, that the cost to the US Treasury of a prolonged recession or depression is greater than what you would need to do a stimulus. I think there are a few things we need to keep in mind with that. So one is that I think what we've passed already is a good start, but I actually think of that more as a stabilization bill. It's not really a stimulus bill. It's really just to help make sure that families and small businesses can make it through this time when everything has to be shut down. We're going to need at least another $2 trillion in actual stimulus to get demand going once we can open things up again. I really like some of the ideas that have been thrown around. One of the things I think we need to be cognizant of is what a different economy we have than what we had during the Great Depression. And so we know we need green energy infrastructure, and we know we need investment in infrastructure. And I think that can be a big component of what we need to do. But what we need to recognize is that most of the people who are out of work right now, here in San Diego County, we don't have a single zip code with under 20% unemployment, but most of those folks work in the service industry. And that means that it's not an easy one-to-one match of just moving all of those service industry folks into construction jobs. And construction jobs have gotten much more technical than they were in the 1930s and 40s. And so I think what we really need to be looking at is how we can create social insurance programs around care, where we know that we're going to need more elder care with our aging population. We know that right now we don't have enough childcare to meet our needs even before this pandemic. And so making sure that we're doing the New Deal in a way that recognizes what our economy looks like now and who those workers are who are out of work.
And I can't resist this question.
Okay.
Where do you stand on Medicare for All at this point? And perhaps has that position changed since the pandemic hit?
So I've been supporting Medicare for All since 2016.
Okay.
I think that anything this pandemic has shown how important it is to not have your healthcare linked to your employment. We're seeing here in San Diego County, again, not a single zip code with under 20% employment in the middle of a pandemic. That means 20% of people at least who are losing healthcare if they had it. Frankly, I think what we're seeing with the increased rolls on Medicaid and what people are joining the exchanges, at least here in California when they've been open, we're basically getting a de facto public option just by virtue of the fact that there are so many people who need that assistance and are out of work. And if we're going to do that, then I think we should actually pass a bill that is strategic and coherent and actually has a real plan for how we are going to have a healthcare system that really addresses everyone's needs.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm going to take a 2-second technology break here, and all of you will have the opportunity to see me make faces at my computer screen while I do something, and then we'll be back and we'll continue. Also, as a housekeeping note, Mara Elliott, I don't see you on the chat here. If you are on, please send me a private message. And if you're not on, then don't do anything because you didn't hear me. All right, I'm going to go on mute now, and we'll be right back. All right, I am back now and we're ready to go. Our next speaker is Raul Campillo. I'm sorry, I have rubber lips now, who's running for San Diego City Council District 7. So I'm going to unmute you now, Raul. And you are good to go. Thank you, Raul.
Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it. Hope everyone's having a great day. It's Wednesday. That's right. I can rely on knowing the calendar because it's the first Wednesday of the month and I'm talking to Mesa-Foothills. Hope everyone's doing great. I just wanted to update you on where we stand with the campaign. Right now, everything has been, ground to a halt, but my team and I have been making phone calls to people in District 7, checking in on a lot of our supporters and other people we met along the road, making sure that people have their needs met during the day. Still a deputy city attorney and have been working full-time on the gun violence restraining order unit. I'm sure some of you have read in the news about a gentleman in, I believe it was Ranchos Penasquitos, who thought that Bill Gates was infiltrating us through this pandemic and was going to control us with vaccines through 5G. He was stacking up shotguns and we were able to go in there at the San Diego Police Department and get the guns away from him in my office. Helped put together the restraining order that took away guns from a person like that. Obviously, that's a person who has a serious mental issues. But one of the sadder things of my job as a prosecutor and being on this team is seeing that what's being missed by a lot of the media. I see stories on Slate or Mother Jones, but I don't really see headlines on major national news about how domestic violence is up, how suicide threats are up, and that has led to, at least for the city of San Diego, a 40% increase between January and February and March and April in the gun violence restraining orders we've had to go after. So I think it's important that we all know that we need to continue to check in on our neighbors. We need to check in on our family members. Economically, people are hurting, and that leads to secondary effects. And for people to know that there is a resource that calling the police to let them know that a family member of theirs has made suicidal threats, so that we can go in there and take the guns out of their hands if that exists. A lot of times family members don't know that. And so the police, when we do one of these gun violence restraining orders, will run a what's called an APHIS, which means checking in on their firearms that are registered with the California Department of Justice. And we can assist and get guns out of the situation and make sure we don't have these tragedies. I'm just proud to be part of a team that is working at the crossroads of law enforcement, mental health, public safety. We know that this problem is only going to get worse, and it's unfortunate that that gun stores are seen as an essential service by so many people when right now is really not the time for that. I'm grateful that we haven't seen as bad as it's been in Michigan or other states where people are storming the state capitol with guns, but in California we have these gun violence restraining order laws, and the city of San Diego is at the forefront, and so I'm proud to be part of that team. Other than that, I don't have too many updates. I will say you asked for a silver lining. I think one of the silver linings I'm seeing is just being able to take care of our neighbors. I live in a condo complex where everyone has now, beforehand you didn't necessarily get to know your neighbors too well, but working from home, you see the people around the complex a lot more. When you go out for a walk, I'm not in the office all day long, and being able to help different neighbors of mine who just need something from the store and being able to coordinate. I feel like there's a sense of neighborliness that's being rebuilt, because people, when they don't have their work environment or their church environment, a lot of churches are closed. That's another thing I miss, is the ability to just go to your neighbors and try to be helpful in that way. And so I'm really glad to see that. And I'd say that's a big silver lining as well. I'm happy to take any questions, but I'll cut it off right there. I really appreciate all your time. I know it's starting to get a little late, but thanks, Mitch, and thanks to the club.
Okay, great. Thank you, Raul. We had a question come in email earlier today, so I want to address that. Essential workers are having a difficult time of it from multiple county divisions and the SEIU union. They're highly stressed. They're not protected with sufficient pay or childcare. Many of them are married to other high-risk employees, and they face the possible choice of either not going to work when called or leaving their children with no childcare. This affects managers, EMTs, fire department, health care, home care, mental health, attorneys, Department of Protective Services, etc. They're looking for hazard pay to help with childcare expenses and issues related to COVID-19. Amazingly, the board voted against this measure number 13. So how can we encourage the Board of Supervisors to do the right thing here and protect our essential employees as they're working on hazardous duty?
I'd say step one right there is getting Tara Lawson-Remer elected instead of Kristen Gaspar. That's obviously the best way to do it. I think one of the things that I've known this from beforehand, just San Diego County for a long time had the ethos, the Republican ethos of, we don't need to provide this. We don't need to provide this for our workers in particular, our public sector workers. I know the city of San Diego had a child care program for a long time that got cut when, in the midst of different of the pension fight, different budgetary issues. They always say, hey, let's cut these services to our own workers. And now we're saying to ourselves that our county employees, our public safety employees are, in fact, the people we turn to the most when things are starting to go bad. And so I'm not sure how we can go about bringing that issue up before the county again, but right now is the budget season for the city of San Diego. They've had the day-long budget committee hearings over the past few days, and calling your representative or calling the council president's office. I know Barbara Breeze, the chair of the budget committee, calling their offices and saying, make sure that we have these, I wouldn't call them amenities, I'd call them necessities for our workers, our working families, because, and on top of that, the other issue is of recruitment. When certain cities offer it and others don't, when private businesses offer it and cities and counties don't, we lose out on great workers who want to be involved in public service, but aren't prepared to or aren't going to be paid enough to make up the difference. So I think that, electing Tara so that we can have a third seat on the county is going to be the turning point for the county. And right now, call your city council members in the city of San Diego, or even if you don't live in San Diego and just want to see that done, or maybe you're a worker for the city of San Diego, but you live outside of San Diego, that would be the way to go.
Okay, yeah. Sarah Jacobs has a comment in chat here. If you live in the city of San Diego, call your council member and support $5 million in city funds for childcare for essential workers. They're considering it this week, and the county funding $5 million is contingent on the city passing it.
Yeah, that was an interesting measure to see the county say, we'll do it, but only if you do it first, kind of. Not even, I mean, thanks, I'm glad. Let's get that done, and then the county will have to live up to that. I don't like half measures like that, but it kind of says to me that they aren't valuing workers as much. But Sarah's absolutely right. Right now is the time for us to be able to do that and be able to get $10 million for city and county workers to be able to have their children taken care of and other issues that come along with that particular measure.
Yeah, I'm rolling my eyes here, not because I'm against what you're saying, but because I agree with it so much. It's like, come on, let these people have childcare so they can do their jobs and risk their lives on our behalf while we sit here and eat takeout food. I mean, it's not a lot to ask. Let's just do it.
Couldn't agree with you more, Mitch. But we got to get that third seat. We got to get that third seat on the county board. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. All right. So let's thank you, Raul, and we're going to move on to Barbara P. And I'm going to start out by putting Barbara. Well, I'm going to start out by unmuting Barbara so she can actually talk, which is, as a technology professional, I know these things. And I'm going to put Barbara on the spot and ask Barbara to address that point right up out of the gate. Where do you stand on this expenditure? Barbara, take it.
Hi, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you for joining us.
Well, hello from District 1, where the city of San Diego, we just finished 3 days of intense budget hearings. We still have Thursday and Friday. And the next step in our budget process after Friday is the council submits, each of us individually submits a list of our priorities to the mayor. There's something called the May Revise. He comes back to us with more information. So actually, I was just starting to type into the chat function how you could all reach my city council office. And I'll also type in about my campaign. So this is an issue we will be discussing. There are 9 of us on the city council. So to get anything approved, we need at least 5 votes. And if we think the mayor's going to veto something, we will need 6 votes so we can override his veto.
Great.
So
great. I'm sure you had some prepared comments there. Do you want to?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that the last few weeks I've been particularly busy in my role as council member connecting residents to resources, whether it's an individual who lost their job and is having trouble with they're getting their unemployment insurance, or it's a small business owner who's had to close down and is having trouble accessing either the federal program or the city. We have started 2 assistance programs for small business and 1 assistance program for nonprofits and arts organizations. But we don't have enough money to do everything that needs to be done. And I'm particularly concerned about small businesses. They don't have the deep pockets that a Costco or a Target or a Vons or a Ralph's has to withstand being shut down. Well, all those stores that I just mentioned are actually open and doing business right now. And our small businesses, most of them are not. And they are at a major disadvantage. You could go buy a book at Costco, but you couldn't go to Warwick's bookstore and buy a book for the last 7 weeks. On Friday, that will change. You'll be able to do curbside pickup at many of our small businesses. But as you see in La Mesa, the small businesses are really the fabric of your community. I drive into the village of La Jolla and it's like a ghost town. And I am concerned about how many of these businesses will be able to open up and survive. And that is where a lot of my focus has been. My council office has done several webinars. Our most recent one was all about small business, and we had the head of the Central Black Chamber of Commerce the head of the Hispanic Chamber of E-commerce, and 2 members from an organization called Business for Good. All of these organizations representing small businesses and talking about, you know, what a challenging time it is for their members right now. And of course, it's a challenging time to be a candidate, and it's made me realize more than ever that the city has to organize in new ways. And I'm very impressed. Our development services department, in a matter of a few weeks, went totally online with most of their employees working remotely. And as we're going through the budget process, I'm asking each department, you know, how much office space do you have now? How many employees are coming to work every day in a physical location? How many people are working remotely? How much office space do you really need? And I think this is going to be one way we're going to save money, is by not having as much office space as we have. And I think this is going to create opportunities in the real estate world to repurpose a lot of real estate into housing, which we desperately need more of.
Okay, great. So you had talked to the Point Loma Club, you'd mentioned something in passing about internet access, home internet access.
Yes, so the city of San Diego got a check for $248 million from the federal government under the CARES Act. Only big cities in the country got this kind of money, but it comes with restrictions, and we can only spend it on things related to COVID-19. And I think and it was nice to hear Dr. Weber talk about the importance of internet access. And I have made it a priority that everybody in the city of San Diego should have access to the internet. If you're an elderly person, you need it for telemedicine, you need it for shopping, you need it for social interaction. A family needs it so they can educate their children. I mean, everybody, it is really something you cannot function without today. And many of the providers like Cox and Spectrum offer a discounted program for $10 a month to families in the school lunch program. But first of all, not everybody has a child in the school lunch program, and $10 a month for many families is a few meals. So one thing I'm going to be looking at as a candidate and hopefully as mayor is how to get a basic free broadband package to every resident in the city. Other communities around the country have done it, and it's something we definitely can do in San Diego. And one thing I'm really proud of, the heart of my council district is the biotech industry, and that industry has continued working through the pandemic. We should be very proud that in San Diego, vaccines are being developed, therapeutic products are being developed, ventilators are being made, test kits are being made, and basically every biotech company is working because they're all making companies related to healthcare, which are essential. And this is San Diego. Qualcomm was hiring during the pandemic with its employees working remotely. And one of my themes has been, this is where our city should be focusing its economic development efforts, because these are high-paying jobs that create good service sector jobs around them. And our key is to make sure that the children growing up in underserved communities will get access to these jobs, will have the skills and get access to these jobs. And as mayor, I will have a school engagement coordinator in my office who will develop linkages with employers so that from a young age, children will understand the opportunities that are available to them. And as they get older, they will get paid internship programs. And this is really essential for our future. We've been overly dependent on tourism. It's been 23% of our workforce. And it's, we've been very dependent on the TOT, the hotel taxes. And that's one reason we're expecting at least a 300 million revenue decline between March 1 and next June 30. And that's about 20% of our general fund.
Okay. What should we be doing about tourism? I mean, I don't know when people are going to be coming back to Legoland and SeaWorld from around the world. Is there anything San Diego should be doing about that?
So I think the conventions are going to be slower to come back than individual tourism. And we are blessed to be located, near Los Angeles, Orange County, Arizona, Nevada, many areas where people can drive here. And I think once the economy starts opening up, we will be a destination of choice for individual vacationers this summer. And that will be very helpful to our hotels, to our restaurants, and to other businesses that depend on tourism. And our tourism authority is planning to do, as soon as it's appropriate, to do a marketing campaign in those areas that, you know, it's millions of people who could come here very easily.
What about, since you brought it up, the convention business? What can we
The
do?
conventions, the convention business or the convention center?
Well, both really. We've got a homeless shelter now. So
Well, Measure C didn't pass, and so we're not going to be expanding the convention center anytime soon. And our convention center right now is being used to house homeless individuals so that we can have them in a safe place. And we've been very fortunate. We've had very few people in the homeless community test positive for COVID, and those who have are living safely in hotel rooms.
Great, great. All right, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I was just going to type my information in, and also I will find out about Lake Murray. I was missing
Yeah, please do.
So I'll get back to you, Mitch, on Lake Murray, and hopefully you'll be able to walk there soon.
Yes, my very small dog misses sniffing all those animal parts.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And our next speaker, who was supposed to go earlier, but I got confused on my list, so that's on me. And you've been very patient. Elizabeth Lavertu is up. I'm going to unmute you and do all the appropriate muting and unmuting here, and then you're good to go.
And thank
all right,
you.
there you are. There you are. Yay, thank you.
Yay. Thank you, Mesa-Foothills, for inviting me on to your very first Zoom. It's great to see everybody's face. It's the one thing that gets me through the quarantine, I think, is getting on multiple meetings a day and, you know, getting to connect with everybody. But I am the endorsed Democratic candidate for state assembly in the 71st Assembly District. I, like 4.2 million other Californians, was furloughed during the pandemic. So I haven't been working since March 17th, and I, like many other Californians, have had difficulties receiving any benefits. So just a nod to echo what Toni Atkins said at the beginning of the meeting. Reach out to your assembly members or your representatives, your state senators, if you're having difficulties. Brian Mainshine was able to help two of my coworkers, two of my coworkers today to get connected with EDD for the online unemployment benefits to get them paid, since they hadn't been paid for 7 weeks now. So definitely reach out to your representatives if you're having difficulties. So far, what I've been doing a couple days a week, I've been heading to Lakeside to hand out meals to children near Lindo Lake Park, which is beautiful. If anybody, you know, wants to get out and help with Meals with Kids, it's a program that's with the San Diego Food Bank and Heaven's Windows for here in East County. And we have about 5 or 6 locations where we're handing out meals in East County right now. Also, my team and I have been making calls to seniors who live in East County. We've been, you know, calling mostly people who are most likely to be living alone, and just checking in with them, doing wellness checks, and then connecting them with resources that they may not know are available, or even providing food in instances where there are not resources available in their area. There's through that process, you know, I've been getting information and help through AARP, and it's been really, really rewarding experience. So if anybody's sitting at home and wants to make some phone calls to people in our community just to check in and see how they're going, even just a few minutes a day really goes a long way. We also CalFresh online. I don't think anybody's mentioned this yet, but CalFresh does online groceries now, where you can order through Walmart or Amazon. They're looking at expanding it to other stores as well. But for people who are on that program who don't necessarily feel safe going into grocery stores, or aren't having luck finding food in the grocery stores, that is a definite resource that's available to you too. And then CalFresh also several weeks back now rolled out the program for the similar product substitutes. So instead of only being able to buy certain products that were always sold out and people weren't able to get food because of it, there are substitute items and substitute products that can be used as well. if any seniors need any assistance and they're thinking about calling 211, but 211 isn't working for them, the Aging Hotline has been expanded. So the 1-800-339-4661, there's multiple people on those lines to help seniors throughout the state of California connect with resources. And then again, back to the internet, I know a couple of electeds and candidates have talked about it. In East County, we have a lot of rural areas where people don't have access to the internet. So, I do have a resource guide, which is strictly phone numbers as well for people. So if you're looking for that, please reach out to me. But when it comes to getting rides to grocery stores or rides to medically necessary appointments, things like that, a lot of seniors aren't comfortable using public transit right now. So there is factsd.org and AIS Rides, both offering free rides to people in San Diego County. And there's 800 numbers available as well that I can get to you guys. But yeah, no, it's been very rewarding. People are just thankful that somebody's calling to check in on them. And then some people don't have any, family members nearby. And they've been alone now for almost 7-8 weeks. And so they just, they request that we call them once a week just to check in with them and chat with them. So we do have a phone pal system too. So if you're not comfortable, cold calling somebody to see how they're doing, but want to be somebody's phone pal, please give me a call at 619-807-6947, and I'll put that in the chat as well. And I can set you up with how many ever people you feel comfortable calling in a week, whether it be a handful or 1 or 2. But it's been really great, like chatting with people every week or so, just talking about, anything from the weather or their favorite TV show, but it's really helping them feel less scared with the whole pandemic and more connected to the community. So that's pretty much what we've been working on. I don't know when we're going to switch back to the full campaign mode. That's going to be up to the state and up to how comfortable we feel. But right now, we've been getting our name out, doing positive things in the community and helping people. And I think that's what really matters during these times. You're muted.
It's a good thing I'm a technology professional. Do you happen to have the URL for the senior phone banking? We ran it in a newsletter, but I don't have it at my fingertips.
If anybody wants, they can email me at liz@elizabethlavertu.com, or they can call me on my cell phone at 619-807-6947. My campaign is calling into seniors, and I can get you connected with that. If you feel more comfortable doing it with the Democratic Party, they have it too, and you can request phone lists by zip code. But it definitely helps getting my name out. Nadia, who is one of my superstar volunteers, she even made 50 phone calls a day with COVID and breathing difficulties. She was still at home quarantining herself away from her family, making phone calls because it's very rewarding. But a lot of people, when we get off the phone with them, they're like, you know what, we're going to vote for Liz because, they're the only one who called us and the only one who seems to care. So it's been really rewarding and really touching at the same time.
Yeah, it definitely has been. Hearing about all the candidates working for the community even before they are elected is very inspiring. Thank you. Thank you to all of our speakers. Mara, if you are on this Zoom call, please send me a private message. And I'm going to mute Elizabeth, who is getting shorter even as we speak. That's about it. I think we're about wrapped up here. I do urge all of you while I am speaking to scroll back in the chat, because many of our members and our speakers have been leaving some excellent information there. And I'm going to try to save it if I can. Let's see, we have another message here. All right, so that's it. I'm going to wrap things up. Send me a private message, anybody, if you've got some final business that I am neglecting. Thank you for staying with us, and we hope to see you soon in real life. Until then, you can look for a replay of the meeting on our YouTube channel Just search for La Mesa Foothills Democratic Club on YouTube and subscribe while you're there. Also look for links to the video on our website, Facebook page, and Twitter account, or in our email update tomorrow. The website, once again, is lamesafoothillsdemocraticclub.com. The Facebook page is also the name of the club. On Twitter, we're LMFDems. And if you want to sign up for our email updates, go to the website and look for the Get Email Updates link at the top of the page. Good night, everybody. Stay healthy, stay sane, and vote blue no matter who. I'm going to just take everybody off of mute now, and everybody should talk at once so we can't understand what anybody says.
Bye,
Good job.
Democrat, Democrat.
Fell asleep.
I do have a short announcement about Go Team if people are interested.
Hold on.
Oh, I am interested.
Pop up. Yeah, there you go.
No.
Okay, we have an announcement from Tina, so I'm muting everybody. I love this power. I love this. Unmuting Tina. Go.
Okay, I'm going, there are a lot of trainings that the California State Party is having that are via Zoom. So if you want to learn more about how to connect with people via social media or send text for your campaign, that's all available at the state party website. We do not know yet what our strategy is going to be come October, September, October, because obviously we don't know what the world we're going to look, what we're going to live in is going to look like. So right now we're preparing kind of for all eventualities. But if you do want to get more information about campaigning via social media, there's all kinds of trainings that the party has, and I've participated in a couple. And again, they're streamed after they're done, so you can see those. Thanks. You can mute me again.
Good night, all.
Night.
Everybody.
Night.
Night, Val.
Hi, everyone.
Howard, I'll be calling you.
Great job, Mitch.
Yeah, wonderful job.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you for having us.
Amen.
So little of who I am happened in those 8 years. So much more of who I would happen before.
Oh.
I'm trying to believe you.
Mama's ready.
Here we go.
I'm ready too. So tell us about how Mama as a little girl, because she said she was nice. That part of you really liked the yeah. He goes back to her brother is. She's the best person. That's right. Do you feel you have your life back? Do you miss the White House at all? No. I feel
Okay, folks, I'm going to kill the meeting now. Have a good night, everybody.